Today we're going to be looking at topic 9, solving right triangles part 1. So pretty much everything we've done, we need to figure out what we need to do to solve the problem. So first of all, if I'm looking for a missing angle, I have two options. I can use the triangle sum theorem, which means the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees, or I can use SOHCAHTOA to find the missing angles. So what are we going to be looking for in these triangles? To find, using the triangle sum theorem, I'm going to say that I'm only missing one acute angle. In order to use SOHCAHTOA, I'm going to be missing both acute angles given the two sides. Now, how do I solve this? If I'm looking at angles adding up to 180 degrees, I can always take 180 and subtract the two angles and get my answer. Or I can add the two angles and subtract from 180 degrees. Or set up an equation. The three angles in the triangle, angle 1, angle 2, and angle 3, all add up to 180 and solve. So if I look below, I'm going to set up an equation. I have this square means 90, so I have an x plus 32 plus 90 equals 180. Now in order to solve that, I would combine my like terms and I would get x plus 122 equals 180. Subtract 122 on both sides of the equation, and x is equal to 58. So x is 58 degrees. Now the other option is, what happens if I'm missing both angles? But I'm given two sides, which always helps. So my steps to solve this are, once I pick my angle, I'm going to need to label my opposite, my adjacent, and my hypotenuse. I'm going to pick SO, CA, or TOA, and press the second key to solve. So the way I do these problems is I pick my angle, which is x in this case. I label my opposite, my adjacent, and my hypotenuse. Well, I don't need the adjacent, so if I look at SOHCAHTOA, I crossed out the A. So what do I have left? So sine of x equals 3 over 7. Because there's no x on either side of this side of the equation, I can't multiply or divide, so it kind of becomes a trick question. So that's how I know I'm going to hit the second key. So I go to my handy calculator, and I type in second sine 3 divided by 7 and enter. And it's 25.4 degrees. So that's the two ways I have to find angles. But what happens if I'm looking for a side? First of all, we could use the Pythagorean theorem. If I'm given two sides and I have to find the third, I'm going to want to use that. The first step is always to label the hypotenuse, because that never changes. Plug it into c squared equals a squared plus b squared, and then solve. So here, when I ask you to pick an angle, you can't pick one of the acute angles because we don't know which one we're looking for, because we're not, or which one we have. So that's kind of my first hint. So I pick my hypotenuse, which is 8. So I get 8 squared equals x squared plus 2 squared. 8 squared is 64 equals x squared plus 4. I subtract 4 on both sides, and 60 equals x squared. I have to take the square root of both to get the x all by itself, and x equals the square root of 60. I can simplify that radical, that would be topic 0, or I can plug that into my calculator and get a decimal approximation. When I plug it into my calculator, square root of 60, I get 7.7. Now finally, I'm going to be using SOHCAHTOA to finding missing sides. I'm giving a mixture of at least one angle and one side. I'm going to have to label my opposite, my adjacent, and my hypotenuse. And then I'm going to have to pick SO, CA, or TOA. And then where's X? I'm going to multiply if it's in the numerator and divide if it's in the denominator. So step 1 was picking my angle. I label my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. The adjacent has nothing by it, it's actually right here, so I get rid of that. When I get rid of the adjacent, I'm going to get rid of it up here. I'm going to pick SOHN. So sine of 62 equals 5 over x. Because x is in the bottom, I'm going to divide. So x equals 5 divided by sine of 62, which I'm going to put that in my calculator. 5 divided by sine of 62. And I get 5.66.